This is Basket Case Clubs, CPR Group's podcast where we turn basket case clubs into showcase clubs. Hello everyone and welcome back to Basket Case Clubs. My name's Michael Connolly and it is my pleasure as usual to guide you on this journey as we try and fix all of the dumb shit that clubs do wrong or get wrong, which is why they become basket case clubs in the first place. Basket case clubs in the first place as we try and take them on their journey towards showcaseness. I'm trying to squeeze in as many new words as I can here, Steve. Anyway, joining me back again. See what I did there? Steve, welcome back.
Thank you. Yes, and we don't really think that we can solve all the dumb shit that happens in clubs, which is a good thing because that means we'll never be out of a job. Because our job is to help stop that shit happening. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a world where every club just ran as a wonderful business with sustainability, like not the hijacked term that only refers to environmental sustainability, but proper all-round sustainability, triple or quadruple bottom line sustainability, because they know what they're doing, they treat people well, they deliver great services, they understand how to deliver value for their members so that they've got this ongoing cycle of income that helps propagate wonderful clubs. But like you say, egos get in the way and
emotions.
Yep. Yeah, and what are those emotions? It's funny. Like, I often talk about emotions and whittle it down to mad, sad, glad, happy, or ashamed. And everyone gets shitty at the end when the scared and ashamed don't rhyme with mad, sad, and glad.
Right, yeah. Is that like those faces that you see, the photos of people pulling faces that are reflective of each of those emotions? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think so. Like, and you can really whittle down human emotions. Like, we've got lots of words for it.
Yeah.
But really, it's just almost grades of happy. Like, I can be pleased or I can be ecstatic. And they're kind of at opposite ends of the emotional spectrum. Where do you think the dumb shit that goes on? Let's just take an AGM because we're still on our constitution. We're always on a constitution discussion, or we're back on the constitution bandwagon today. In an AGM, how do you reckon people are feeling when they make those stupid decisions or do stupid things?
Oh, well, I think it depends on which part of the AGM. If
election,
if there's an election, then they could be feeling any one of those, couldn't they? And it's funny that you asked that question now because I was just talking with a client with whom we're helping with an AGM that will be this Saturday. And, as is often the case, there are these questions that come up after the nominations have closed and, this person's only nominated for one position, other people have nominated for multiple. Can we now retrospectively nominate that person who's only nominated for one for multiple? And the answer is no, because the cutoff
rules are there.
Passed. Yeah. And if we're running an AGM, especially if it's under a constitution that we wrote, in this case, that's what's happening, we're going to stick to the rules. And in some cases, that's going to piss people off. People aren't going to be happy with that because they don't get their way. The people who don't get elected might be anywhere from really ecstatic to really upset.
Yes, I'm free!
Yeah. And the people who do get elected might similarly be at either ends of that spectrum. But it's interesting that we often talk about the discomfort and angst that exists, the tension that you could cut with a knife in the room at an AGM. And when we run AGMs, we just point to that and, we're realistic and we've run enough of them to know that that's going to be the case in almost every instance. But even just pointing to it can help to manage those emotions of people and can help to keep them in check to an extent.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you put a group of people together in a club, association, regional, state, national body, and people aren't going to like one another.
Not everyone. You'll have some groups that just gel and they become cliques, like they click to a click. And then you're going to have some that, just always rubbing each other up the wrong way or taking things the wrong way. So I reckon there's a lot of fear in it. So I reckon that scared is a strong emotion. But what are they scared about? That's where the discussion starts
differs
to get really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm scared that, and this is one that's going to poke at some nerves. I'm scared that if I'm not re-elected, the people who get or person who gets reelected into my position might do a better job than me, and
Might
that
show
makes
me
me
up.
look bad, or it might show up the fact that I've always known that I've been phoning this in and just doing a half-assed job just to get by.
Or
But
to see my name in shining lights.
yeah, but okay, so then it's a slightly different one. That's an ego thing, but it's
Yep.
fear that fear that I won't be enough, fear of
Okay.
not being loved, fear of not being enough. We all, as humans, that this is the basis of a lot of our decision making that then leads to how we behave in these situations. So are we
Okay.
going to behave well? Are we going to misbehave? Are we going to dig our heels in for something that we know at some level it's not the right hill to die on, or it's not a
Yeah.
necessary hill to be dying on?
And we've seen
Yeah.
plenty of that in
Yeah.
AGM
Yeah.
scenarios, haven't we? People just, making dicks of themselves, arguing for something that you can really hear. God, this person has to. Everyone else is telling them to sit down and shut up. Surely they can see the writings on the wall, but they keep on arguing because they've
Yep. Yep.
chosen their position and they're sticking to it. Damn it.
Funny story. There's an AGM that I'm involved in. I'm luckily not going to it. It turns out it would have been fine because it's later this month, and the people that they thought were going to nominate to hijack to, in effect, try and take over, which is, it completely against their duties as office bearers of this association,
Yep.
didn't nominate. So
Oh,
they're grandstanding and doing everything, and then at some point they realise. So I reckon that they've had a nice whack with the self-awareness stick to go, maybe I will look like a dick
yeah. Okay.
if I go through with this.
Wow. So there are now sole candidates for some or all
No, no,
positions for
still,
that
still,
AGM.
still multiple candidates. It's
Okay.
just the ones who were grandstanding on taking over and massive shake-up,
Wow.
like really abusive stuff has been going
Okay.
on.
And they just haven't nominated. They
And they
just
haven't
missed the
nominated.
cutoff.
Yeah. So the
Okay.
CEO of this organization has copped a whole heap of personal shit that
Oh,
they just do not deserve. And I think I mentioned this in an episode a few weeks ago where we talked about not the chair not pulling up bad behavior. It's there.
yep.
So those
Yep.
people who are misbehaving, I'm gonna. Well, we got gunners in the Air Force.
Yeah.
I don't know how many we need in this club, mate. Anyway,
Should
I
we get
can't.
this? Should we get this
Yeah,
ship on the straight and narrow?
I can't think of an objective segue. Oh, see what I did there? Get this ship on the straight and narrow. I'm glad you didn't say get this ship back on the straight and narrow because
Yeah,
has it ever been on the
no,
straight and narrow?
it's a meandering ship on the high seas,
Yeah.
stormy high seas. Yes.
So in this podcast you do, Steve, with your brother, what do you talk about? Oh, this ship and that ship, all sorts of ship.
Bullship. Bunch of bullship.
Okay. I dropped a little bit of a clue when I said objective. So I want
Yep.
to talk about the objects today. And normally they're very high in a constitution, as in close to the top, because they're actually really, really important.
Yep.
But I think there's a fundamental problem with objects in that this will probably end up being a bit of a theme. I think they don't speak from the heart. I think that when we talk about, your big why and start with your
Yeah.
why and let the hows and whats follow, I think that that's what objects start out as. But when you read most objects, in practicality, there's a lot of what we do in
Yep.
there. So the objects of the Constitution are that bit where the Constitution says this is what we do. So from a funding perspective, you've got to make sure that if you are a sport club, that your objects say we are a sport club, so that
Yep.
grant agencies are allowed to fund you.
Yep.
If you are a charity, then I believe that your charitable purpose should absolutely be spelled out directly or in more of a descriptive way in the object of your constitution. So it is absolutely clear that this is why we exist. And if you are a charity, that's kind of it. Like if we
Yeah.
exist to for the benefit of women, then okay, let's state that right up front, and then state how we do that.
Yeah.
And it's
When we talk strategic planning and we take organizations on the journey through discovering why they actually exist, we'll often point people to their objects in their constitution and say, start with this, but note that a lot of that stuff is going to be what you do.
Yep.
And it doesn't speak from the heart. It doesn't emotionally engage the reader into deeply understanding why you were established and why you're still around and why you do what you do.
Yeah, exactly. So that's in the strategic plan where you want to get it right because we start to use words like mission. Now, I'm only really just thinking about this. If you think about mission, it obviously has a religious background to it. When people go on mission, they go and live on a mission, and their mission is to convert people to the faith, in effect.
Mm.
That I think translates quite nicely. I've probably fallen more on the side of using the word purpose than mission because it's I think it's a bit clearer, and I just tend to like it more. I don't really have a strong feeling about it, but I've tended to use the word purpose because it's nice, but I also like to say live on purpose.
But
So
we
run
also
your
advocate,
organization on purpose.
and we also advocate for people who are running not for profits to think about any profits that they make as being profit made for purpose. So
Yeah.
PFP instead of NFP, that's really started to resonate with a lot of people, and then they feel empowered to go and make money to support their purpose.
Yeah.
In some states, what other states call objects in the Constitution, in some states it's actually referred to as purposes.
Nice. Okay.
So that's an interesting little side note in terms
Yeah.
of your preference to use that P word.
Yeah. So there's a lot in that because yes, you make your money, but it all goes back in. So then
Yep.
you become a better organization.
Yep.
It's really good and really important when the Constitution has a high level of clarity around these objects. So this is what we do, and this is why we do it. So what's the impact? And strategic planning definitely helps, but I see no reason why we can't get that a bit more of the feeling into the Constitution.
Yeah.
Be clear on what it is that we do because we exist to, if we're talking sport, nice and simple, let's say we're talking the sport of netball, we exist to provide opportunities for people of all ages and skill levels and abilities to play netball and to provide facilities and equipment for them to do so. That's very how. Then we can get into some more of the feeling words. So what is it about us that sets us apart? Again, spitballing, if we were a regional organisation, it might also be about community togetherness and the third place. Other organisations that used to exist here don't exist here anymore, and this is now what netball provides in this community. Work that in. Like, I think that's really important.
I've just had a thought. We're probably going to talk a little later about some of the things to avoid common pitfalls, but one that I often steer organisations away from is being overly prescriptive, to be really detailed. And you'll see as we have lists of objects which run to 1.5, 2 pages in length, others that have objects and powers kind of merged into the one, which can be confusing and certainly not what I like to see in a constitution. But I think if you focus on what you do, then I think it's a little easier to fall into the trap of being overly prescriptive and trying to say, this is everything, this is all the stuff that we do. The problem with that is that if you're overly prescriptive, you're going to leave something out. So I think, a list of, well, we'll probably talk about the ideal list of objects in terms of how many you've got. I think somewhere in the order of half a dozen, a few more, a few less, probably not a few less because that's 3. And I think that's too short a list. 1 is too few. I've seen plenty of constitutions with 1 object, and I think you for a start, you really want to catch all at the end to say we can do anything else that helps us achieve any of the above objects. So at the very least, you should be looking at 2. But when I see 20 or more objects, I think there is a real risk that they've fallen into the trap rather of trying to say everything that they do. And if you focus on why you do what you do and why you exist in the first place, I think you're less prone to falling into that trap.
The other thing about having less rather than more is you're keeping it at a nice high level. And you mentioned the catch-all at the end. So that's important and does enable you. So let's say a rugby league club wants to do some fitness activities in the off season.
Yep.
We can do that because running, and they could be quite different. Like it might not be organised sport at all. It might be disorganised. we're all going for a paddle. It's a level of organisation, but we're going for a paddle. This is a club activity. We're all going to get some paddle craft and go for a paddle in the local creek as an off-season fitness and training. I'm literally just making this up as we go.
Yep.
But you don't want to have objects that are too prescriptive or too narrow in their focus,
Yes.
to say, we exist for the purposes of rugby league and for no other purposes whatsoever.
Or even better, we exist to promote, foster, encourage, promote, and support the sport of rugby league and other manly pastimes.
Oh
Which
my
I
God.
shit you not, I have read in a rugby league constitution. In that same constitution, it also said to support the war effort.
Okay, so that's okay. Supporting the war effort. So now you're giving me an indication of where it was, of when it was set.
Yes.
But I will allow that one to pass if it's from Manly in Brisbane or Manly in Sydney. The
Very
Manly
good.
pastimes. Then I'll let it pass. But
Yep.
otherwise, come on, guys.
In all other instances, yeah. So
Despite what our
prehistoric.
mate over in the States might be saying about diversity and inclusion, I think that it's still a worthwhile endeavour.
Yeah. Yep.
Righto. So you mentioned some sorts of things that you want to include. We've talked about the number not being too many and not being too prescriptive in the way that they're written. So I like not
Yep.
to the point of them being wishy-washy motherhood statements, but being at a high enough level that says, okay, this is what we do, but without saying exactly how and then putting limitations on it. What are the sorts of things that you reckon we should have?
Oh, I think, like you said, if you're a sporting organisation, some broad terms about your delivery or offering of opportunities for participation in that sport, but also promoting it, encouraging people to recognise the benefits of that sport, ensuring that, like you said earlier, in terms of qualification or eligibility for grants, clarifying that you are a sport club. You are focused on sport. Yes, you offer opportunities for other pastimes, manly or otherwise, depending on your geographical location, but you're a sport club. And I think that some other considerations then are things like what you mentioned earlier, social connectedness. As we always point to, the reality is that groups of people, i.e. clubs, exist regardless of their activity or focus, whether it be sport, craft, agricultural shows, providing food for the homeless or food insecure. We're a group of people and we have shared and common interests, and our engagement in this organisation is an opportunity to come together as people with, like-minded others and to share our interests and to do good, to do some good. So I think, so then some other considerations are, if you're an organisation that exists within an affiliation model of some description, if you've got a governing body at state or national level, for instance, that I think it makes a lot of sense to recognise that in the objects of the Constitution and to support, to affiliate with and support the aims, objectives, and so on of that governing body. Sometimes we get a bit of resistance to that. For instance, if an organisation's thinking of bailing from that affiliation model and saying, nah, bugger them, we can do it better on our own without their support. But even that then is an opportunity for us to have that discussion with them and to uncover the reasons that they don't, want to live by the aims and objectives of that governing body. In keeping with the social connectedness provision, things like a safe, fair and inclusive environment as well, to point to the comment that you just made a little earlier about inclusion, diversity and so on, and the very, I think, reasonable increase in focus on that stuff that we're experiencing now, rightly so in my opinion, ensuring that stuff's embedded in the Constitution.
Yep. And then to live it as well.
Yeah.
Like it's not enough to just say, and I still get frustrated when I work with some clubs that still have a misogynistic bent to them. So
Yep.
I would dearly like to single out some clubs. So I won't, but I will say there are still some golf clubs that are far too old school when it comes to not being welcoming places for women.
Yep. I think I told the story of one of the ladies who was here from Scotland, from the R&A Golf Club at St Andrews. And she was one of the architects of the R&A Women in Golf Charter, which is a fantastic initiative, and many of our clubs here in Australia have signed up to that. And it's all about living and breathing, as you just said, that philosophy that we're all equal and we should all be able to have equal access to this wonderful game of golf. And she told this really fascinating story about having turned up to a golf club in Scotland for a meeting about this charter during its very early days of coming together, and was met at the door and said, "Oh, sorry, you're not allowed to come in the front door. You have to come in this side door because you're a woman." And she just told it really matter of fact at the 100th the event to celebrate the 100th signatory here in Australia. And it was so eye opening for everyone in the crowd. And
I may be presumptuous here, but I'm assuming it was a bloke who'd said,
Yep.
love, out to the side door.
Yep. And it was only a few years ago. We're not talking.
But the
50
irony
years
was
ago.
lost on him.
Yeah, yeah. No, sorry, it wasn't lost on him. He was incredibly apologetic and said, "This is ridiculous, but I have to ask you to do this because that's the rule at this golf club." Blew my mind.
What would you do if you were in that situation and you had,
If I was the security guard or the bloke,
yeah,
I'd love to think that I'd march her through the front door really proudly and, glare at people
Yep.
who dared confront me.
Yep.
But if I was deeply rooted in the, ancient
Steve,
traditions
would you
of
be?
golf,
Would you be?
I wouldn't.
There you
I
go.
wouldn't.
So march her in, march her. And look, that's you're taking action. Like living it is important, but taking action is really important.
Yep.
So where I wanted to wrap up was, and you've already touched on this, it's about, and so many parts of the Constitution are like this. It's an opportunity to have a conversation that you wouldn't otherwise have. So at no point in our planning for this episode did we say, "Oh, this will be a good chance to tell that story about the wonderful lady from the RNA to come and to put that into some context."
Yep.
I think that this is an opportunity to have conversations about things that we wouldn't otherwise speak about. So where it's been really good is to talk about diversity. So we've talked about gender diversity in particular. And even if you can't, even if we're not at the point where it's appropriate to have a quota that says we must have at least X percent representation from a particular gender, we can be at the point to say we recognize we're not there yet, but we genuinely believe that everyone has an equal right to leadership in this club, to performance in this club, to support from this club, whatever it is, we genuinely believe in it. Put that in there, because that's the stuff that then you can share your constitution with new members and with new members of the committee or board, not because you have to from a governance perspective, but because you're actually proud of it. So this is one part of the constitution where you can take a step back from all of the legalese of the stuff that has to be there, especially if you've got things like a liquor license with a whole heap of provisions for liquor licensing.
Yep.
When you've got election clauses that deal with where we started, some of the bullshit ego stuff that people forget to leave at the door and then drive clubs to ruin. This is a chance to take a step back from that and say, what are we proud of about this club? What is it that makes us want to keep coming back? What is it that would, if there are people, we talked about rugby league clubs, there are people that if you cut them, they'll bleed club colours. You know, I mean, I'm absolutely, as a Queenslander, you cut me and I'll bleed red. So that's proof right there. But what is it that makes you that connected to the colours of your club or what you do? And put that in. And if you want to then, in redoing a constitution, a great opportunity here is, as I said, have the conversation about things like diversity, about even things like what we do and why we do it. And if you've got one of those big old lists, this is a great chance to refine it. Okay, you can chuck it into ChatGPT and see what AI comes out with for you as a starting point, but don't stop there. Actually refine it so that it speaks from the heart, so that it speaks from the oldest part of your brain, where you think about what makes you glad, what makes me happy and proud to be a part of this. So that's one of those very strong emotions. What is it that makes me feel like that? And I don't want to give too many examples. I don't want to say too much because it's got to be from you. So what gets you out of bed on a Saturday morning to go and set nets up in the cold on a rainy winter's morning? For me, it was always the smile on the kids' faces. So if I can get, when they're running off the field, they've had a great time, and I've learnt why you do high fives, because then the kids have to work against gravity rather than slap your hand and make it all bruised. But it was those smiles on the kids' faces as they're running off the field that I knew, yep, they'll be back next week. Yep, they'll be back next week. And that's all. You know, we don't need to create wonderful football stars at 6. But if we can make them fall in love with physical activity, with teamwork, with togetherness, with their club, with the time with their family and the time with their friends, that's what it's about. And if we do, and obviously we don't want it to be wanky. You know, how many times have you seen fun and friendship and family? Don't just say it like a wank. Say, this place feels like a home. This is the people who come and join our club. This is their home away from home. Sorry, I'm on my passionate soapbox again, Steve.
But I think that's so still, right up where I reside. So at least you got a home ground advantage. So we often say that your constitution should reflect the personality of your organisation, and there is no section that can be more reflective of your personality than the objects. And I think the point that you just made about the rest of the document having, you know, by necessity, some clauses in it that are going to be a bit boring and dry and procedural. The objects is the section where you can really present who you are, or ideally, you know, even who you want to become more of as an organisation. So that's a really important takeaway, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. Steve, I've got a message for our listeners. I know that we've got I think that we're up to 900 billion listeners now on a regular basis.
They're all across the universe.
Across the universe. Yeah, translated into one language. And what's interesting is that everyone who listens, so to you, our dear listener, I know that you connect with us. So the discussions that we have about these episodes with people that we see after releasing an episode like this, I say, oh, you said something in it, but it meant something to me and it changed the way I acted, and this is the result. Those stories will never, ever get old. So we get them when people listen to our podcast episodes. We get them when we standing in front of a room explaining a topic in a way that, a governance topic in a way that people can connect with. And then they go, oh, that's what we've got to do. And then you see those aha moments, and they are so gratifying, and it's so wonderful when people get to that point. So what I'm hoping that our listeners can do for us is, because all of you are the type of people who are passionate, you are the passionate people that we're talking about, you are the people who jump out of bed to get to your club or to go to your job at a peak body, at a council, at a university where you know that you can help these passionate volunteers. We would love for you to be able to do a favour to all of the club people out there who don't know about basket case clubs, who don't know about the sorts of training programs that we at CPR Group are developing with the Australian Institute of Community Governance that are targeted directly to helping people have a better time doing the volunteer work that they love, because they might not be loving it anymore. You know that there are people who don't have the benefit that you've got of being connected and being passionate because you understand things at first principles. So if this podcast has helped you to understand a little bit that you'd like to share with someone else, then the easiest way for you to share the podcast with somebody else is just to leave us a review. Click the button wherever you're listening, just click that button that says leave us a review. And that is a great way to share what we're doing and what we're giving and what we're trying to achieve in making the lives of volunteers and hardworking mums and dads easier. You will be the one who can share that with them. And by the way, when you do that, you get all the credit because you're the great guy who shared the information with them. So all up to you.
Even if you tell them that it's because we told you to do it.
Yeah. And then they'll listen to this episode and go, oh, that's why she told me. Well, she was right. She is cool. I really do. Anyway, so over to you. That's your homework for the next couple of weeks until we come back and talk to you again. Steve, as usual, it has been wonderful to go on this journey with you. And this has been quite fun because, we didn't talk about a whole heap of stupid objects. We kind of talked about too long objects or too short objects. But it was really a chance to say, this is a great opportunity to make a great club. Make your club great again. Can I say that? Too soon?
Give me some good subtle references in here.
So the only thing you've got to do, of course, thanks to Jess for doing a wonderful job as our producer.
Yes, indeed.
And editor. So I'm not going to say to go and do the newsletter or the social media or anything this time. All you got to do is share the podcast with somebody that you know will benefit from it. And then, they'll be on the same journey as you. Thanks, Steve. Great to chat with you again about stuff that we all love and we're passionate about. I'll see you
Yeah.
next time.
Constitutions and objects within them more than almost anything else.
Yeah.
Nerdy CPR group folk. Thank you for the opportunity to listen to your soapbox ranting.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Oh, it's getting chilly up here. It's windy up here on my soapbox.
I shall see you on that soapbox next time.
Bye. Basket Case Clubs acknowledges the traditional custodians of the country on which we record, being Yugambeh, Turrbal, Jagera and Kabi Kabi land. We recognise their enduring connection to land, waters and culture, and pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to First Nations listeners.